Bob, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I understand that you've told this story many, many times. You've been grilled many, many times, and it's very stressful for you, so I really, really appreciate your time. For people who don't know the story, there is a documentary. Jeremy Corbell has a documentary out right now. It's called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and UFOs.
And Flying Saucers.
And Flying Saucers.
Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I first heard your story decades ago. I told you last night when we went out to dinner, I've seen pretty much every interview you've ever given. I've followed the story incredibly closely. Mm-hmm. But for people who don't know the story, let's give them the bullet points. You used to work at Area 51. And Area 51, you went like, huh?
Well, we want to be accurate.
Okay.
Area S4.
S4, okay.
It's about 15 miles south of Area 51.
Okay.
But,
you worked in, how would you describe it?
I guess within the Area 51 compound. You can call that a subset of Area 51.
And you got that job. Before that, you were working...
Before that, I had worked at Los Alamos
right.
National Labs in New Mexico.
And you were involved in what kind of work there?
Nuclear weapon development, physics. I mean, they do everything there.
So how do they approach you to say, hey, Bob, why don't you come on out to the Nevada desert?
Well, the way this went down was, at that time, it was 1982, I had put... a jet engine in my Honda. And Los Alamos put it on the front page of the paper. It said, Los Alamos man, physicist at the lab, built this 200-mile-an-hour, Honda jet car that I drove to work every day. So I was known in Los Alamos, the guy with the weird car, and, you could hear it from, a mile away. Anyway, the day that came out on the front page of the paper was the day Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, was giving a lecture down there at the lab. And we didn't have much going on that day in our group, and I asked if I could go down there. And I went down there early, and Ed Teller was outside, leaning on a brick wall there and reading the front page of the paper. Now, this is a guy out of history, so I introduced myself. Hey, I'm the guy you're reading about there. And we talked for a little while, and it was cool. Fast forward to years later, I had moved out to Las Vegas and had, left Los Alamos and, went on to other things. And I wanted to get back into the scientific community. I left to start other businesses and that sort of thing. So I sent resumes out, and one of them went out to Ed Teller and referenced our meeting. Back in the day. And anyway, he remembered me and gave me a reference, somebody to contact at EG&G. And that's pretty much how it started.
So you get a phone call or a letter? Like, what do you get?
Well, I got what did I get? I got a letter initially and went down for an interview probably a couple times, and it was down at EG&G Special Projects, which was at McCarran Airport at that time out in Las Vegas.
And did they give you any sort of job description of what you were applying for?
They said it was for I can't remember exactly what they did. This was a long time ago, but I think it was advanced propulsion or something like that, something relatively generic. And they said it's in a remote area. It's going to be some days on, some days off. And, it was kind of it was kind of not exactly a full-time job, but you might have to be out there for 2 weeks at a time and take 2 weeks off. So it was kind of the work schedule would be kind of broken up.
And did this seem attractive to you, or did it seem weird?
No, it really wasn't weird, because people that work at the test site, anybody that's familiar with the area up there, working at the nuclear test site or at the Tonopah test range north of there, that's typically how things go.
So you had known about it from the scientific community? Because Area 51 at that time was
No, they didn't say anything about
classified.
Area 51.
Okay, so they
just said it was in a remote location, and you just know it was up at the test site.
Right.
So, but there was no mention of Area 51 at that time.
So they've done hundreds of nuclear tests in Nevada. That whole area there's giant chunks of Nevada that people.
Yeah, there's a big piece of Nevada, and it's split up into different areas. There's a nuclear test site. There's Area 51. There's the Tonopah test range north of that. There's little sub areas. There's areas where they test chemical weapons and things like that. So it's all broken up as a gigantic test area.
So take me back to first day on the job. You accept a job. They take you out there.
Yeah, it's the first day, really, I didn't really get to see a whole lot. The first day was essentially just paperwork. That's when I flew into Area 51 proper. And I left McCarran Airport and flew what they call the Janet flights. Just, a passenger plane from Las Vegas to Area 51. And it was really just going through a mountain of paperwork that day. From security clearances to... it was like 2 or 3 hours of just solid paperwork, and that was really an uneventful first day.
When did things get weird? When did you realize? Like, at what point in time did you say, "Hey, this is not normal work. Like, this doesn't even seem like it's from this planet"?
That I can't tell you what day that occurred on because so much time has gone by. The days have kind of fused into one, and I can't separate the days.
Was it a slow burn, or was there a moment of recognition?
Well, the first inkling I had was when I came in. There's this facility that is at S4. It's in the side of a mountain, and normally we had pulled in with the bus and gone around the front through a normal double door. This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh, my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is fucking hilarious.
Right.
So I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So that was the first time I had seen anything that was weird. It was some time later that I was introduced to my my lab partner, Barry. And we had some of the subcomponents of the craft in the lab. And Barry was very anxious to get a new lab partner. So he was very talkative and couldn't wait to show me different things. And it was in the demonstration of the reactor working where it caught my attention to where this is technology that doesn't even exist. So, I mean, that was the first time I knew that this is really something different.
What was it? What was it? What was it about this reactor that made you think that it didn't exist? Technologically.
Well, it was I actually have to back up because there were some briefings that I read before that certainly gave me the impression that this was going to be a weird job, but this was the first hands-on thing. This was a small reactor about the size of a hemisphere, about the size of a basketball on a metal plate, and when it was running, it produced a gravitational field of its own. Now, this is something that we can't do. We can't produce any gravity. The only way we get gravity is from large quantities of mass. But there's no machine we can have that turns on that makes gravity. Like, you can turn on an electromagnet and it makes a magnetic field. We can't make a gravitational field. Anyway, this device was producing that. And Barry said, almost like he was bragging, go ahead, try and touch the sphere. And I couldn't. It pushed my hands away, just like two like poles of a magnet. So that was...
so like when you take two magnets and you try to press them together and they push against each other?
Yeah, that kind of cushion feeling, but you can't get them together. The closer you put them, the more they push. But
and you felt that physically
with my hand? Yeah, now there's nothing that does that. And that immediately caught my attention, going, wow, this is something else.
What was your thought? Like when you felt that and you knew that there was nothing that you were aware of that could produce this?
Then that connected me to the briefings that I read on the first day at S4 was that, everything that I had read was apparently accurate.
What were you reading?
I read, it was kind of an overview. This project was to back engineer the alien craft. And specifically, it was to try and back engineer and see if we can duplicate the technology with available materials. Now, to do this, they split the project into many different pieces for several reasons. They do this on all classified projects. So nobody has the complete story, but they compartmentalize everything. Now, we had the power and propulsion system. So what the briefings they gave me were like a 1 or 2 page overview of some of the other projects that were going on, on the craft. The only reason they do that is just in case what you're working on is connected intimately in some way that we don't know of to one of the other projects. You have to know their, their existence. So, again, they have everything from metallurgy to, weapon potential of the craft. And these were all, essentially very short briefings. But mine was just power and propulsion. And it made it very clear that what I read was accurate.
So when you were reading that, before you actually saw the reactor, what were your thoughts on what they were describing? If you knew that something like that didn't exist, and they're describing it in the briefings, what did you think you were going to see?
I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was reading, I thought, is this some kind of test?
See if you're crazy?
Well, not to see if I'm crazy, a lot of times they'll take in real high security jobs. I mean, they'll intentionally insert nonsense into them, whether it's to confuse the fact or if for someone was to leak it out, they would carry that information along and know where it came from. So I read through the documents, but, I didn't know if this was, part of some kind of test or...
Right.
Or what? Or was it potentially realistic? I mean, I really didn't consider it being all that possible as far as being the actual thing that I was going to work on at the time.
How did they turn it on?
The reactor?
Yeah.
The reactor can be turned on or turned off in a lot of different ways. The way Barry showed me it, the hemisphere is removed. There's a small tower in the middle. When you put the hemisphere on, the reactor activates. The reactor shuts down. It's load sensing. So if there's no load on the reactor at all, it shuts down. When there's a load present on it, it starts up again.
Load meaning?
You can consider it an electrical load. So although it doesn't necessarily operate electrically, there's no wiring that connects any of the subcomponents together whatsoever. They just have to be in the immediate vicinity. The stuff is borderline magic, and that's essentially where we left it, when I left the project.
So there was no progress made?
There was some progress. I mean, we did identify, at least we think, some processes and had a rough idea, we think, of what was going on, but I think this is a problem that they've had for a long time. And, I was replacing somebody that Barry worked with prior to me. And I think there was some horrific accident that I didn't have a whole lot of information on, but, Barry alluded to that.
A horrific accident, like where someone died, or?
Yeah, where somebody died.
Because they were trying to tamper with things or figure out how something worked?
Yeah, the reactor in particular.
But yet he let you touch it.
Yeah, I think what they were trying to do was cut into one.
Oh,
now,
Jesus.
they had more than one there, and that was supposedly there was an unannounced nuclear test, and that's what it was. At the time, remember, they were still doing underground nuclear tests at the test site. But from what I understand, according to Barry, there was an attempt made. Now, this must have been a pretty desperate attempt because it's not a very scientific process to analyze something that way. But it looked like they used a plasma cutter or something like that to cut into an operating reactor.
How many of these things did they have?
They had nine craft altogether. I only got hands-on with one of them, so I can't really say how the others operated.
Did you see the other ones?
Yeah. At one time, and only one time, the bay doors between the hangars were all open, and I could see all the way through.
And were they all exactly the same?
No, they were all different.
Different shapes?
Yeah.
But they were all from somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, did anyone make any attempt to explain or to tell you where they came from?
No one is the least bit interested in letting everybody know all the facts. They want to give you the minimum information that's necessary to complete your task. So you're not getting the story of where they came from. You're not getting the story of how much progress other people are making. You just focus on the small component.
But they gave you some indication that they've been working on these for a while?
Yeah.
When do you think they acquired these?
I really couldn't say. I think they've been around for a while.
So they bring you into this room. You see this reactor working. You realize this is nothing that, as far as like the scientific community at current time, has the ability to create.
We still don't.
What is your life like from that moment on? Is that where everything changes? Because I would imagine the moment you actually make contact with something that's extraterrestrial, whether it's an object or a being, something where you can actually absolutely be certain it's not from here, your whole paradigm, the whole world you live in, is now a different place.
Well, this is the only time it became exciting. The rest of the time, it was really an ominous feeling being at work. But at that time, it was exciting. I mean, now I knew we were on the absolute beyond the cutting edge of science. And I was so absolutely excited to be there every single time I was. This was a fantastic opportunity. And however, in short order, it began to concern me. We really have no idea what we're talking about. And the excitement kind of turned to dread at some point, because the amount of power we're dealing with is astronomical. I mean, to affect gravity, to produce the effects like this equipment does, takes huge amounts of power. And I've given the example before of, taking a small portable nuclear reactor and, putting it back into Victorian times, with the scientists of the time, and just dropping it in a room. And they come and look at it and see that it's producing power and wonder how it works, so they start taking it apart. And as soon as they get some of the shielding off, the people are going to drop dead because of the radiation inside. Now, the people have no idea that radiation even exists back then. But anybody that comes in to check on them will also drop dead. And, there's no reason that exact scenario couldn't happen with what we're dealing with. We have no idea how the physics operate within this thing. The power levels are, like I said, astronomical. Like, it's incredibly dangerous to tinker with something like that. And, in some respects, we were guinea pigs, just try to find out how to make this thing.
So they had a series, as far as you surmised, they had a series of different scientists try to back engineer this thing, try to figure out what this thing was, and they would bring in new people and let's throw Bob at it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how many, but I knew there was certainly one before me, and I knew he died during the analysis of the reactor itself.
And you don't know how many have worked on it, and no one gave any
This could have been
indication.
there for 50 years. It could have been there for 5 years.
When they're giving
really
you instructions, what are they saying? Like when they're giving you direction, they're showing you all this stuff. Like what are they saying? What specifically? What are they asking of you?
Well, essentially what they ask is what I said. We are just to gather as much information as possible, find out how it operates, and see if we can duplicate it.
But they never told you where it was from. They never let you ask questions about where it's from.
Well, if the information I read in the briefings was accurate, now what I do have to say is the information that pertained directly to the reactor was accurate. What I read did jive with reality.
In terms of how?
In terms of how it was made, what we saw, how it operated, the materials, how it, turned on, and what was discovered about it. I'm sorry. The migraine is really making it hard for me to think here.
Sorry. No, we talked that before the podcast. You tell everybody Bob was getting a migraine. I know you're very stressed out by this, which is one of the reasons why I appreciate you doing this.
Where was I already?
We were talking about
right,
the way you explained it.
And so there was some paperwork that indicated that this was from the Zeta Reticuli star system. Now, how they obtained that, I haven't the slightest idea. But it wasn't just from the Zeta Reticuli star system. It was what they called ZR3. So it was a third planet in that star system. So there was no other information about it other than that's supposedly where the craft came from. Now, is that true? I don't know. I have no way of verifying that. But that was printed in the same materials that referenced the reactor. Now, I looked that stuff up when I went home. And Zeta Reticuli is a binary star, two stars that orbit one another. And it's only visible in the southern hemisphere, and it's about 30-some-odd light years away. So that's literally all the information I have about that. I don't know how they found out it came from there.
And you also probably have some suspicions that they give you some disinformation like you were talking about before. Where they would, I mean, if you ever decided to talk about this, they added a bunch of nonsense to make whatever is factual look ridiculous.
Right. Or be able to trace it down. Like, hey, this fax came out and, this Lazar guy said it came from Zeta Reticuli, so they knew it would
when
be me.
When you read Zeta Reticuli, were you like, what in the fuck is this?
Well, reading all of the stuff, it was, what in the fuck is this?
You're like, why did I sign up for this? Like, what?
To me, this was cool. This was interesting. I said, I was just excited to be out in a secure area, in the middle of the desert. I said, this is awesome.
How old were you at the time?
I was in my 20s.
Yeah, so you're probably totally geeked out.
Oh, yeah. This was great. I mean, I was excited. So I didn't care. I'm reading through everything. And
so you read through all the Zeta Reticuli thing, but then when you see the actual starship with the little American flag sticker on it.
Well, was
that later or before?
That was before.
So before. So you see the thing before and you say, oh, this is American.
Wait, what's that before?
So many years.
Yeah, I can't.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
The days have fused together. It's so hard to separate what happened in each visit to the place.
Do you remember the thought process when you read that it's from Zeta Reticuli?
Yeah, it didn't hit me like a ton of bricks or anything. It was just like, yeah, okay. And,
you think it was bullshit?
I don't know.
You just were like, okay.
Now I don't. I mean, because when I read it, I hadn't verified anything, and this was just a bunch of stuff I was reading, and I thought maybe after this they're just going to give me a test and see what I can remember in crazy information, and then it would. But like I said, when I finally went in with Barry and had hands-on experience with what they were talking about, it took on a completely different meaning.
So there's a plate, there's this thing that looks like a half a basketball, and when it's on, you can't come anywhere near it. You can't touch it.
Right.
What is gravity about that? Like the concept of gravity to most people is gravity is bringing something towards it.
Right. Well, I guess you would say it's anti-gravity. Mm-hmm. It's gravity shifted 180 degrees. It's, anti-gravity.
And did they have any understanding about what could possibly create this effect? Did they have any areas where they'd like you to look into?
No, they knew there was a fuel source in it, and they were proficient at making it work. And again, my analogy to something like this is you can drop a motorcycle off in the wagon train days and just leave it with the keys parked outside, somebody's place. Everybody will come around it, and they'll poke and prod, and eventually they'll turn the key, get it to start, and become proficient at riding it.
Yeah.
But they won't be able to understand what the hell's going on. They won't be able to make the plastic fender, much less anything else. And I think that's exactly the state we were at. We played around with the parts long enough before I got there where they could make the reactor operate, take the fuel out, and know that it makes it work. How exactly what was going on in the reactor remained a mystery at the time. I think we made some progress on what was going on inside, but I don't think anybody really knew anything. They could just watch what was going on and make note of it.
How long were you there?
I'd say about 6 months or so.
And what progress was made while you were there?
Well, we came up with a bunch of reasonably good ideas about how the reactor worked. And one of them was the square base of it was essentially like a cyclotron, which is a small particle accelerator, a circular one. Particle accelerators, linear particle accelerators, are just a, long tube essentially, and they accelerate particles with high voltage and, radio frequencies till they reach high speeds. But a cyclotron does that in a small circular area. And there's this very heavy element fuel, element 115, something that wasn't on our periodic charts at the time.
But it is now.
It is now, yeah.
When did it become on the periodic table now, the way the charts now?
I don't remember. Do you remember when they...
2004, Darmstadt, Germany, I think is where they first fabricated 4 atoms. They lasted 220 milliseconds with the atoms. It's nothing, right? And then it later was discovered a couple more times they could fabricate it. Then they gave it a place then on the periodic chart after that, called it moscovium.
So they told you about this stuff in 1982?
Yeah, well,
No,
we
not
kind of...
1982.
What year was this?
It was 88 and 89 when
you
I
were
was there.
Oh, okay.
82 is when
82 was
I
when
was
you
at
were at
Los Alamos.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 88, 89, they told you about this stuff. So this was not like...
No, they didn't tell me about it. That's one of the things that this group came up with. The God, I keep losing my train of thought with this thing.
So this one area, this element 115 was the fuel.
Yeah, it was the fuel.
The world will forgive you for having a migraine. Can I just
It's really
say
hard to think through this. Just give me a minute.
We'll just give you more
I
booze.
just want to say one. Yeah, definitely. I just want to say one thing. Bob, for the last 30 years, people have just been on the attack on Bob. Getting to know him, the personal effects on his life. It's really hard to understand unless you meet his family and his wife. I mean, this is the last thing he wanted to fucking do, was have to talk.
Yeah, we should explain that, Jeremy. That you and I had this conversation. I watched your documentary. We had this conversation, and I said, I have to talk to him.
Yeah.
The document, there's been detractors. There's been a bunch of people that called bullshit on many of the things that you've said. But over time, many of the things that you talked about, even in the 80s, have proven to be true. Things that people said were not true were proven to be true. Element 115 was one of them. Right?
Right. Element 115, the fuel they had, was stable. In other words, it didn't decay. It wasn't emitting radioactivity. When they synthesized 2 or 3 atoms of the 115, it did decay, and it was not a stable element. So they're kind of 2 different things. But this is kind of typical. Elements always have, or pretty much always have, stable isotopes and unstable isotopes. Like I think cesium has like 30 unstable isotopes to it. So, hydrogen, for example, you're familiar with hydrogen gas. It's stable. It's not radioactive. But there's also 2 other types of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium. And deuterium isn't radioactive. It's another stable isotope of hydrogen. But tritium is radioactive. Now, they're all hydrogen, but they just have different amounts of neutrons. So it's the same thing with other elements and element 115. Depending on the amount of neutrons it has, designates the isotope, but it's 115. They will continue to take or experiment and try and make 115 at different isotopes, and I'm sure eventually they'll come up with a stable version, but it's the stable version that has the properties that we're talking about.
So they somehow or another had acquired a stable version. Did they say that the stable version had come with this craft?
Yeah, it absolutely came with the craft, yeah.
So at the time, you having a firm knowledge of the periodic chart and knowing what was real and what wasn't real, what was your reaction to having this stable element 115 that wasn't even supposed to exist?
Well, everything was impossible.
Right.
I mean, down to the metal. I did get a chance to look inside the craft on only one occasion, and this was important because where the reactor sat might have been critical to how it operated, since everything operates without any interconnection, so the placement of components might be critical. So they allowed me to go inside and look at it. Again, I forgot where the hell I am.
So you're going into this craft, and what are you thinking when you're inside of it? Like, what are you seeing?
It's a very ominous feeling because there are no, first of all, everything is one color. It's like a dark pewter color, and there are no right angles anywhere. It's as if somebody took, I've said this before, somebody took a model and fashioned it out of wax and then heated it just for a short time so everything melted. Everything looks like it's fused together. Everything has a radius of curvature where two items meet. It's a really weird looking thing. But there was almost nothing other than a small foldable hatchway that looked recognizable. Everything was really unworldly, to pick on it, a way to describe it.
So you get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
Yeah, and the seats were small too. I mean, obviously it was made, for something small. But there is no, there's nothing else in there. There's just seats, the reactor, and some of the subcomponents. There's no control panels. There's no bathroom. There's no decorative components or artwork or anything that you would recognize or trim. I mean, it's just a very bare bones thing.
You're not seeing any screens?
Well, there are archways around it that are part of the superstructure, and one of the archways can become transparent. When I was in there was another group working on one of the archways, and you could call that a screen, more or less.
So through that archway, it would maintain the solidity, the solid, whatever metal it was.
Yeah,
but you could see through
it just became transparent. Yeah, I saw that happen once or twice before I left.
Did you ask any questions about what the fuck?
No,
there's
no asking questions.
There's no asking questions.
No.
But when you watch something become transparent, and you realize it's still there, but you can now see through it.
Yeah, I mean, now that's not that impressive. We do have some liquid crystal materials that are like that. They have
I've seen that in bathrooms.
Smart glass. Yeah, they call it smart glass. So this is just, and I don't know if the craft is made of, an advanced metal or a ceramic. It was cold to the touch, so I would lean more towards a metal.
You're not allowed to ask questions.
No, they work on the buddy system, so I can only exchange ideas and talk to Barry. Now, this really interferes with science because science is based on free discussion, and ideally, you get a bunch of guys together, exchange ideas, work on problems, and that's how things move forward. But they're so over the top concerned about security, they split everything off, and everybody becomes stagnant. It just destroys any of the progress you can make, or at least makes it go so slow. I think they wind up shooting themselves in the foot.
Which is probably why they arrived at this bottleneck that they needed to get this madman with a jet-powered Honda to come in and see what he could do.
I think that was an act of desperation. I think they wanted someone that thinks out of the box and let's just give this guy a try here, because they weren't, and they might have done this 4 more times since. Up to the point in time today, assuming they're still working on this thing.
And when you see this craft and you're inside, was there any indication that there was an area that they would use to control it, to pilot it? Was there a pilot seat? There were 3 seats. They sat around, the reactor was in the dead center of it, and then equidistant around there were 3 seats. That's all. There was a large, they're not consoles, they're large rectangular objects, also spaced equidistant around the center. There's nothing on them, there's no buttons, there's no lights, there's no controls. And they look the same color, the same
Everything
thing.
is the same color.
It's just a different shape.
Right. And directly underneath them, there's 3 levels in the craft. The main level is what we're talking about. Directly under that, those are the gravity amplifiers, the big rectangular objects. Underneath them are the gravity emitters that look like, for lack of a better word, a trash can hanging on a pipe, 3 of those. And then the top layer, this is just my personal belief, I think that has to do with a navigation or their version of a computer with some planar panels, sensor panels around the craft that we would call portholes, but they're not portholes. They're just black areas. And I think that just determines its position in space. But I physically was in the center section, and I stuck my torso in the bottom section and hung upside down so I could see how the gravity amplifiers were positioned.
What is the roughly the size of this thing?
It's I don't remember from being there, but after all this stuff was over, I had John Andrews, a guy from the Testers Model Corporation, and we sat down and tried to figure out from what I saw and known sizes of things, and we came up with 52 feet in diameter. And
so
I think that's
fairly small.
Yeah, so I think that's a reasonable guess.
Now, you said there's 9 of them, and you got a brief glimpse at the other ones. How were they different?
Oh, they looked completely different. One looked like I called it Jell-O mold, and it looked like a classic Jell-O mold with the rippled sides to it. One was a very flat disc, like like a straw hat or something like that. That was sitting up on its edge, and the thin part of it looked like a projectile had been fired through the edge of it. So I don't know if they were attempting to see if the metal could be penetrated, or if that's where the thing came from. Maybe it was shot down. But that was the only one where I saw there was, actual physical damage to it.
And that one was roughly the same size? They're all...
They were kind of too far away to tell.
And there was several teams that were working on the propulsion system, so there was different teams that were working on these different aircrafts?
I don't know. I could only assume.
Right. Now, when you're sitting in this thing and you're looking at this otherworldly craft, your goal is to try to figure out how this thing functions. Your goal is to try to figure out how this reactor, but you would imagine they would give you more time than just one day to check that out.
Oh, it wasn't one day.
Right.
Yeah, Barry was there. I think Barry was sleeping there. I'm sure they had. Now, that isn't weird. Up at the Tonopah test range where they work on stealth fighters, you go, I think, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and you stay up there too. So it's not weird to stay up at the test site.
Right.
So, I think he pretty much, and he acted like he's been up there for a long time.
Yeah.
But
he's still there.
Yeah. Who knows?
Do you have contact with this guy?
No. Oh, no. I wish I did. I kind of thought he was going to come out after I did.
Right.
And I think I took so much flack and it's so much shit for what went on. I think I wound up helping security there, and everybody became afraid of, doing or saying anything after that.
So what kind of reports did you have to give? So you're not making much progress, right? You're just trying to figure out what this thing is, and it seems impossible.
Well, we didn't personally make them. We were always – there was never a lot of information that we gained. The guy, you would call him our supervisor, his name was Dennis Mariani, and kind of a military-looking guy. And he would routinely pop in, during the day and, hey, what's going on, guys? And he would essentially relay any information, anything new we came up with. He was our go-between, where we presented him the information, then he took it to wherever they were, assembling all the data from everybody.
Now, I assume you're working normal days, like an 8-hour day?
No.
No?
No, it was really weird that I would be only called in on certain times and certain days. And they would be weird hours, too. Most of the time was later in the evening. I can get a call at 11 o'clock at night, and they'll say, it's now 11 o'clock. By 11:45, you need to be at the McCarran terminal, and, we'll let you know when we have more information.
But what did you do while you were there? If you're looking at this object, this reactor, and you can't figure out what it is or how it works, other than the fact that it works on this element that we don't even know about.
Sure. The thing was what you do with anything. If you're trying to analyze it, all you can do is perform tests. And all we did is try and come up with every kind of test we possibly could. I mean, we tested, it violated a lot of what we thought was impossible to violate. I mean, one of the first laws of thermodynamics, I mean, essentially any machine, any device that operates always makes extra heat. Nothing works at 100% efficient. Even the headphones you're wearing, anything that takes power, some of that power is going to be converted to heat, and it's just wasted. This didn't. I mean, we looked at, back then we had infrared cameras. They're different today, but back then you had to pour liquid nitrogen into the camera to cool the sensor down and get these infrared images you've seen. But it never got, no matter what the load was on the reactor, it never got above the ambient temperature, which is impossible. I mean, you're, pulling out huge amounts of power and nothing ever gets warm. We tried measuring magnetic fields and there was nothing there. So we started playing around with the emission from the emitters, the gravity wave itself, and saw what we could do with it and how it was focused. So we really spent all our time just trying to see what the stuff can do and what we can control.
So you were seeing what it could do, but you couldn't ever figure out how it was doing it.
No, not really. I mean, we really could only use come up with a best guess. And now I can't say we really that I could absolutely state for certainty how anything actually worked.
Now, how did you know at all how they were piloting it? Because they were doing some tests where they were having these things fly around in the sky, and this is what gets us deeper into your story.
Right. I was out there for one test. Right. In fact, I was with Barry in the lab, and Dennis came in and said, "We're about to run a test. Why don't you guys come out?" Or I think he said, "Barry, why don't you come out here and bring Bob with you?" We went out there, and the craft was already outside the hangar and was just preparing to lift off. Now, they were in communication with somebody in the craft.
So there was a person in the craft?
Yeah, there was certainly a person in there. Now, it's not a comfortable place to be in because it's small, so the guy has to be sitting on the floor in the middle, my best guess.
And this is the same specific craft that you worked on? Because that was the only craft that you were in.
The only one that I touched and worked on. And it quietly lifted off the ground, which was incredibly impressive to see.
Quietly or silently?
Well, quietly, because it
make some sort of a noise?
It produced a little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is kind of a high voltage brush, little bluish glow discharge. As it was lifting off the ground, you can hear a slight hiss sound. Now, as soon as it cleared the ground by about 5 or 10 feet, maybe even less than that, the hissing stopped and the blue glow disappeared. So it lifted off quietly and then it hovered silently, if you want to be specific.
Wow. So then what kind of maneuvers was it doing?
It took off, for that particular time, it took off, moved a little around to the left and right, and then sat back down. The craft itself, they communicated with it with because I saw the guy talking in a regular VHF radio to the person in the craft. And I even saw the frequency that was on the frequency counter of the communication, the transceiver there. But what's weird is he shouldn't be able to communicate with the craft with a radio. The radio wave should bend around the craft. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. Every single thing about the craft and the way they operated didn't make any sense to us. I mean, that's something we talked about for a while after.
Why should the frequency bend around the craft?
Well, you really have to look at the way the gravity wave comes out of the craft. There's the reactor's in the center, and there's a waveguide that goes up to the top. There's actually a small appendage that sticks out of the top of the craft, and it produces a heart-shaped gravitational distortion around the craft. Now, if the craft is sitting in the air and you walk underneath it and look up, you actually cannot see the craft. The light bends around it. You're bending gravity, bends light. It bends radio waves. It shouldn't be possible to communicate with a craft that has an envelope around it that's distorting all forms of energy. But they were apparently in contact with it.
Somehow or another, so through some unexplained way that they didn't bother explaining to you. Mm-hmm. So this thing gets up, it just does some very simple maneuvers, left, right, goes down. And did they discuss this with you? I mean, they said they wanted you to see it.
No, they just wanted, they didn't discuss anything with me. It sat down, we looked around for a bit, and Barry said, let's go back. We went back in the lab. All we got to do was see it. Fast forward to some months later, I did have the test flight schedule of the craft. Now, they had times they had designated high-performance tests. This obviously wasn't one that was a high-performance test. The high-performance test goes above the mountain range, and they do much more radical moves with the thing. Look, this is a prized item, and they're not doing anything like taking it out of the atmosphere or flying around to other countries or anything like that. They just play with this thing right over the test site. But they were doing some radical moves with it. And since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays. And that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays, because it'd be the least chance that anyone would see what's going on.
And this was before the government had expanded the forbidden territory around Area 51 and Papoose Lake and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that occurred after my story came out. Then people started going up on the mountaintops and trying to look down into there, and they kind of freaked out and then did the land grab and pushed everybody back. But yeah, I think all that occurred long after that I came out.
So you're working there, and while you're working there, you're under this crazy schedule. Forgive me for explaining your story, but you would get these phone calls. You would have to go to the airport at 11 p.m., and your wife started thinking that you were having an affair.
Yeah, apparently so. Now, I did give my permission to have, as part of the, security clearance process, I gave written permission to have the phones monitored and things of that sort. So they weren't doing any covert stuff. They, with any Q clearance, which is civilian top secret clearance or military top secret clearance, they go talk to friends and, places you've been, make sure you're not connected to foreign countries. But, monitoring your phone is nothing unusual. However, they insisted that, you don't even talk to your loved one, to your partner, to your wife, whatever, about what's going on. So she was essentially in the dark and didn't know the phone was being monitored. Well, part of the security clearance is that not only do you not have any connections to foreign countries and aren't a maniac, but you have to have a stable home life too. Well, she started having an affair with a flight instructor. Now, they were monitoring this on the phone, and they knew it, and I didn't. So they stopped me coming in, and their attitude at the time was, we need to see how this is going to play out, and if Lazar is going to get a little weird or anything. So let's just, hold him off from coming in and, see what happens.
And they explained this to you, what was happening?
Well, after the fact, yeah, because time kind of went on, and there were guys that were following me around, and I started getting a little concerned, going, well, shit, are they booting me out of the project? And if so, they're not just going to let me hang out at home and go get a new job knowing what I know. So as time went on, I started getting a little concerned, and I took my closest friends and just kind of got together, and I said, hey, remember that job I told you about? This is what's going on. And you don't need to take my word for it. Wednesday night, we need to all go out here. I want to show you what's going on. So I took everybody, and we went out to remember, since I had the test flight schedule, and went outside the base, out into the desert, and so everybody could see, one of the high performance tests. And, it left quite an imprint on everybody, so they knew I wasn't.
And there's videos
crazy.
of these tests, right?
Yeah, but remember, this is it's in the dark in the 80s with a big monster-sized camcorder, and you got, a bright light jumping around. But, we did video of it, but there's no, by today's standards, it's.
But is your video specifically available, the video that you took?
Yeah, well, George Knapp has it.
Is it online?
Do you know? I have no idea.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I show clips of it in my film. It's online, and someone did a deep analysis of it. It was interesting to take a look at how.
Pull this microphone up to your face. Keep it about a fist from your face.
All right. To see how his video looks now, but as far as video evidence, we are talking 80s camcorders. The most important thing is the human story here. Everybody that he took up there on 3 separate occasions, they don't all like each other. They don't all talk. They all agree on one thing. They saw something that night at the exact point in time and space that Bob Lazar said. And remember, this is 17 miles south of Area 51. No one even knew really about Area 51. We're talking Papoose Lake, and they all agree. They saw something that night they had never seen before, and they've never seen since, right when he said it. So that's one of the 6 things where I'm like, how did he know? You can dismiss him. I tried to dismiss it. But some things we can't get around, and there's about 5 or 6 of them. How did he know about those?
If Jamie wants to find that video right now, what would he look under?
Bob Lazar, UFO, S4, Area 51, just kind of like that. So it's like the S4 UFO video, Bob Lazar, and a guy does an analysis, but you're analyzing these 80s videos.
Right.
He from the very beginning, Bob never said, I have proof of my story and I'm going to tell the world. He said at the very beginning, I cannot prove my story. That's not why I'm telling this. George Knapp convinced him to tell people, and he lived through it, and I didn't believe it either until I talked with George.
Okay, so you filmed this test flight, one test flight, and then you get caught.
Actually, it was, I think, the 3rd time, because we went out there the first time. Everybody saw it. Everybody was amazed because it did some radical maneuvers, and everybody had a lot to say about it.
The maneuvers that I've seen the video. It doesn't. I don't think there's something we have now that does that.
No,
in terms of a human piloted craft. I don't know, obviously, with the government.
No, it's impossible. Nothing can move like that. And remember, we didn't start filming from the very beginning. We were waiting for something, to happen. The craft took off and then came flying at us, stopped, turned at a right angle, flew back, and then, after it did some, amazing stuff, we to get the camera, and then we started filming. So it doesn't have all of it on there; it just has some.
The way I describe it to my friends, and they said, "What does this look like?" I said, "Take a laser pointer, and then have a wall, and then move it around the wall." How it moves around the wall? It doesn't seem like it has anything to do with inertia or physics, or it's not impeded in any way by the atmosphere. Yeah. That's what it looks like.
You're essentially separated from reality, as crazy as that sounds, with being encased its own gravitational envelope. Inertia is not going to affect it. And, this is how some of those recent sightings with Commander David Fravor, I'm sure you've heard of the Tic Tac UFO. He describes exactly, the thing operates exactly the way I was describing. That's why he was interested to talk to me. But we saw this, and, on the way home, it's like, hey, we got away with it. We should try it again the next test flight date. So this became a thing to do. And I think it was on the 3rd time that we got caught. We started becoming a little careless. I think we took a motorhome out there. And, it was like the stupidest thing you could possibly imagine.
Started tailgating.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And
again, you're in your 20s.
Yeah. And, what was funny was we went out there, and my friend Gene Huff and I were leaning on the front of a vehicle. And just for some reason, we just started talking shit. Like, well, I hope they realize that, I don't remember what we were saying, but, that it's something about attacking the base or something along those lines and stealing the craft or something like that.
Something crazy.
And then about 20 feet in front of us, we see a little green light fall on the ground and roll to us. And unbeknownst to us, now it's pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. There were a bunch of guards standing right out there, and they had a night vision scope where they were like from here to the wall looking at us, listening to us, and the guy dropped it, and the scope rolled over to us, and you could see the green screen. We turned the lights on, and all these guys are there. So it was...
Whoa.
Yeah. So we did incredibly stupid stuff and got caught, as we should have.
So when they catch you and they bring you in, then what happens?
Well, I went in for debriefing. The following day, I went to Indian Springs Air Force Base, which is kind of a defunct base that they used to use at the nuclear test site. And this is when they brought out the transcript of the phone call with my wife. And, they sat me down and we said, when we meant to keep the secret, we meant you can't tell your friends, right? And it just being sarcastic and trying to. And then they got real serious. But this is where they, took the transcript out and were reading me what my wife and, our friend were talking about. And I don't know, it was a hard time.
So what happens from there? What do they do with you? Why don't they arrest you?
I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not sure they knew what to do, but they did let me go that night, and I went home. And this is kind of when the most stressful part started. Because
you're realizing that you're being monitored 24/7.
Now I know not only am I being monitored, but now I know I'm in trouble. And it wasn't a short time after that I contacted, at that time, the only investigative reporter I had heard of in Las Vegas was George Knapp. And, told him some of the story because I had no idea what the hell was going to happen at that point.
So George Knapp tries to dissect your story, tries to find holes in it, tells it, puts it online, and makes everybody aware of it, and that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, to make a long story short. Yeah.
What happens, to really make a long story short, what happens from there on? I mean, do they contact you and say, hey, Bob, it's probably a good idea if you shut up? Did they try to label you as crazy? Was there...
There were a lot of things that happened at, between that point. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff to fill in the story. We'd have to go back to Los Alamos and well, I really don't want to talk about that. The
top secret weapons stuff that you were working on.
No, I'm talking about the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I have to think about how I'd...
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something. So I just have to dance around a couple.
He was rated just during the filming of the movie. People thought it was
the movie's great, by the way.
Thanks, Joe.
And it's on Netflix right now if anybody wants to check it out. And if you're one of those people like me who, I've always loved the idea of UFOs. I became extremely weary talking to people who are UFO believers and UFO fanatics because there's so many of them that are full of shit. And not just full of shit, they're childishly delirious. Like the way they talk about things. I mean, there's so many people that I'm in contact. They reach me in the night and they explain to me what we're doing to the ocean is wrong. And you're like, okay.
This is one of the reasons I didn't want to do the show.
I'm sure.
Well, no, it's no joke. We've had people literally camp out on our front lawn, and in some ways I can relate to some of these people. Maybe some of them did really have some kind of experience or saw something, and all their friends think they're crazy. But hey, now there's this guy I heard on the radio, and at least he knows I'm not full of shit, so I got to talk to him.
Right.
And so most of the correspondence I get are people trying to get a hold of me going, Bob, you got to listen to me. I'm coming to talk to you. I'm driving from Oklahoma or whatever. But some of them are just fucking batshit crazy, and they're frightening.
There's a lot of schizophrenics that are involved in the conspiracy world. So there's a lot of people that have real issues.
Joe, it would be a disservice to your audience to not say that we have to look at what's going on now and understand. I've heard on your show a bunch of stuff about what's going on now, and to not really understand what's going on now you can't see Bob's story in the correct light after 30 years. And at some point, we should just touch upon that. The biggest being that things like the Tic Tac UFO case that came out, I've heard people, even on this show, say, oh, there's a glitch in the radar. That's a data poor perspective. You just don't know yet what's really going on. Commander Fravor, I was able to get the interview with him to talk with him way before it became public. I got that from him. He saw it. Other pilots saw it. This is a big thing that's going on right now. They had more sightings on the East Coast recently, cubes with spherical ores. These are not aerodynamic, and these are the people we trust to defend us on 9/11. Commander Fravor protected Los Angeles on 9/11. So we trust them, but they're not trained observers. Radar, individuals see these things, and the big one, just to throw down so we can consider a story a little differently, there's more depth to it. The big one is the United States government has admitted that they have been continuously studying the UFO phenomenon. That program was called ATIP, was called OSAP. That's the mother program. George Knapp got that out. They announced through the New York Times about ATIP, but OSAP, these acronyms, OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program. Who cares? That was the mother program. So they've admitted we didn't stop studying UFOs in 1969 with Project Blue Book. We don't think it's crazy. We actually want to reverse engineer the technology. That's why on your other show, you said, what's this AAV thing? It's like they're making up another UFO name. Well, hold on. There's a reason. Because in the documents, the DIA documents that George Knapp released, that everybody said was fake till now they know is real, they call them AAVs, which is Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. People are getting the acronyms wrong. So the reason for the terminology change is so that we can mimic what we're reading in the DIA documents. People can look for that now. So they changed the names to get people away from UFO or UAP, even like Hillary Clinton said on air, right? So
what are you talking about? Hillary Clinton said.
Hillary Clinton informed the public on Jimmy Kimmel, oh, Jimmy, we don't call them UFOs anymore. We call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Right, so she kind of was giving. The Clintons are very into the UFO topic. Senator Reid, he's done a lot for the subject, the study of it. Right, so she informed the public so they could look for the right term. So these terms are important because the DIA in those documents, they've been calling them AAVs for quite some time now.
And they changed the name to anomalous.
No, that's kind of a misnomer.
No,
so they always mess around with things, but it's actually advanced.
Right, but when they're describing it in the news, they were calling it anomalous aerospace vehicles.
Totally, and that's cool. They were also saying anomalous aerospace threats, AAT, right, because they want the sense of a threat.
Right.
So my point is, if people don't know this now and they think this stuff is fantasy, this part of it, that we're studying it, that we take it seriously, we're spending money on it, and that we're getting great data from visual pilots to radar. That's why we know it's aerospace. They dropped from 80,000 feet. But guess what? That's the top scope of the Spy 1 radar is 80,000 feet. So the radar system they were using, it was coming from above that. So my point is this. If you don't understand that this is happening, you're just behind the curve because you don't have the information because of the stigma that you're talking about. I saw you get totally upset with the UFO topic. I met you first when you were totally upset with the UFO topic. It's the people.
When
you're doing your
pull this microphone.
I'm sorry, man. When you're doing your show, the Joe Rogan Questions Everything. Mm-hmm. I could see how frustrating it is. Trust me, I have been frustrated to hell. Luckily, my mentor is George Knapp, and he's taught me the pitfalls as I went through it. My whole point in this rant right here is just that we have to now look at Bob's story, but knowing the facts, not someone saying it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a glitch. They're not. And so if you don't know that, you just don't have the information yet.
Well, not just that, knowing the facts as we know them in 2019, not in 1988.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And so what has he said that has come true? He's totally unimpressed with it, right? What has he said that's come true? So I was like, Bob, they've announced gravity as a wave. You were right, man. You're vindicated. And he looks at me and he's like, well, if you think about it, Jeremy, I had like a 50-50 chance. He was not very impressed, right?
When did they announce gravity as a wave?
So they detected, in a sense, gravity waves. And
who is they?
You might know more. There's two black holes that were colliding, and that's how they were able to detect.
Yeah, somebody, Bill, I don't know which group it was or what part of the government.
That's what Google's for.
Yeah.
But
built a gigantic gravity wave detector and pretty much detected
that there are such things as
Here it
gravity
is.
waves.
First observation of gravitational waves. It says it was in 2016. Okay, the first observation of gravitational waves was made on 14th of September 2015, as announced by the LIGO and Virgo collaborators on the 11th of February 2016. Previously, gravitational waves had only been inferred indirectly via their effect on the timing of pulsars in binary star systems. Dun, dun, dun. The waveform, connected by both LIGO observatories, matched the predictions of general relativity for a gravitational wave emanating from the inward from the inward spiral and merger of a pair of black holes around 36 and 29 solar masses and the subsequent ring down of the single resulting black hole. Whoa.
Well,
he was on
in the 80s. The predominant theory was gravity is produced by gravitons.
Okay.
Theoretical particles, but they're not. They're waves. They're not particles. And that's
the thought is that the way we experience gravity, it's based on mass, which is why the moon, which is roughly 1/4 the size of the Earth, has 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So there's some sort of a computation you can make based on mass.
Right. And remember, we can observe the effects of gravity, but we have no idea what it is. All we can do is observe it, and we can't make it. The only way you can make gravity is just put more mass together, and it's just a product of gravity. But if you have a machine that makes gravity, you can pretty much do anything. You can affect time. You can have force fields. All of that stuff that's in science fiction becomes reality if you have a machine that can make gravity. And what we worked on in the desert was a machine that makes gravity.
I love your analogy of dropping off a small nuclear reactor to the Victorian era. I love that analogy because back then that was impossible. That was magic. What you're talking about here, the fact that they just discovered this 4 years ago, that this is a wave. And we're, as much as we know and as impressed as we are, as we should be, with how much more technologically advanced we are than every other creature on this planet, we're still, in many ways, in the adolescence of technological innovation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If even adolescence.
And when you're talking about this binary star system and Zeta Reticuli, and who knows how much longer these things have been around than us, who knows what their evolutionary cycle's been, who knows what, we might be talking about something that's 1 million years more advanced than us.
Yeah, it could easily be. Now, believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and
What
wondering.
is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online, or the Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. The Wilson Memorandum. Use of human
Is
volunteers.
that
No,
it?
no,
I just
no,
wanna
no,
make sure
no.
that was it. Yeah,
No, that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with like saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document specifically?
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting, and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get special access program access to all of these different things like reverse engineering programs. So in this document, they talk about it. I believe that this document, the person that went was employed by Robert Bigelow, one of the guys that has a couple
Yes.
orbiting satellites and all that stuff.
He's the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch.
No, he's not.
No?
He was the guy that owns
He used to own
Skinwalker.
it. Okay.
Yeah, he used to own it. There's a new owner, and I interviewed him for my other film, but there's a new owner, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. But there's stuff that you'll be hearing about Skinwalker Ranch soon because there's a new owner. Anyway, the whole point of this insertion here is just that document kind of validates a lot of this idea Bob just said, that they make a little progress, then they can't go anywhere. They tuck it away, and then they bring it back out, 10 years later and start working on it. What is the limiting factor? I think Bob should speak on this, but it's the material science.
Yeah, it's really where physics is. So I can see them doing that. I mean, I didn't have any information on that, but I think what George uncovered is probably accurate. That we try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock, going, we really can't figure it out. It's just friggin' wait, put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and a decade later, let's take the project out again and see. All right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got your people that you compartmentalize. You got these people working on
Yeah,
these
there
projects.
has to be some people
Right.
that know everything.
You've got security, and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, hey, we need people to guard this building. Don't let anybody in for 10 years.
I think a lot of that is private industry, and I think that's how
Really?
they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is in control of private industry.
What private industry? Some aerospace company? Something?
I don't know.
Yeah, the admiral wouldn't name it in the car,
Right.
in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they still have these things, supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have you
at all.
ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea of where they got them or how they got them?
No, but something must have been said to me from Barry, but it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what was said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
That'd be a great Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
Right?
As all of it would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tripped me
as
out
all-
when he said that for the first time.
Yeah. That's a freak out right
Yeah.
there. Just a couple of dudes with some brushes looking for a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone. They
And-
hit metal.
And when did they find it? You know, that they have 9 of them.
Yeah.
Well, and how could we have not heard about that? What about the guys with the brushes? How could
Yeah.
you uncover something like that? And
Well, Joe's newspaper at home does. I mean, they said it on that first day.
Oh, you mean the Roswell
Yeah,
Daily
yeah, the
Record?
one you told me. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cover. What is this here, Jamie?
This is the document, but I had to do some digging to find it.
Yes, it's just kind of, yeah, so this is where they meet at EG&G, and this is Admiral Wilson, and there's a lot more coming out. Now, I want to be clear, George didn't put this out. He didn't leak this out to anybody. This is, I can tell you how
Who
I...
recorded this conversation?
So this was an employee of, at the time, Robert Bigelow.
And this is in 2002?
Right. Do you remember when he had that government contract called OSAP, the world all knows about now, and he had NIDS that studied the ranch? So that $22 million, everybody is saying it was for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The $22 million was for OSAP that was pushed through Congress, 3 congressmen, right, an astronaut. It was pushed through. And that's what that $22 million, by the way, they spend more money on Viagra every year than they do studying UFOs if it was just this program, which I think is funny.
They probably
In the
make a lot
military?
more money from Viagra
They
than
probably do.
from UFOs, too.
Well, you never know how it seeds into population. But anyway, this program, this is what was the mother program. So it got the $22 million. And really, it was to study Skinwalker Ranch. Oddly enough, that $22 million all was inspired by the phenomenon they were seeing at Skinwalker Ranch, because the scientists, they're seeing vehicles come through like a space in the sky.
Yeah, we went there. I went there
Right,
with Duncan.
yeah,
we interviewed a bunch of people that seemed full of shit, but a couple that didn't.
But
It was
the-
very, very interesting.
Totally. And if you look, I spent a lot of time in the area. I'm not talking about those stories. I'm saying there were scientists hired by the government, right, through Bigelow to study the ranch because they thought it was important. And, you know, whatever. The point is that $22 million was to study that. Then we have ATIP, which is like an auxiliary kind of program of military sightings, like Commander Fravers and that sort of thing. This document is just one of those things that has now come forward that through the Bigelow studies, it was government funded, and then it was personally funded and then government funded. It's just one of those things that kind of shakes you because you got this military guy who can't get access because of the private industry that's holding these non-terrestrial materials, that they can't study it. So that's the claim right now. Give it some time, let people dig more into this. It's fascinating, man.
So you are essentially you're kicked out, right? You're out of this program. You can't work with these crafts anymore. And do they give you any threats? Do they tell you what you have to do from here on out?
yeah, well, I mean, the way it ended was I told George Knapp all this stuff. And, he said, well, let's just get it on tape. Should something happen, at least we have a record of it. And I don't remember what the impetus was, but at some point, George wanted to air it. And he said, you make the call on it. And look, if at any point you change your mind, we won't air it. And it came down to the day where George wants to put it on the 5 o'clock news. He said, hey, this is important stuff. People have to know about it. And I thought it was too. I thought it's kind of a crime. I know you got to keep the technology secret, but you can't not tell everybody that this stuff is going on, that we have, actual hardware from another civilization. It's a big fucking deal, probably the biggest one there ever was. And George said, today's the day we got to put it on the news or something to that effect. And when it came right down to the time to air it, I changed my mind and I said, we're not doing it. And that's what turned into the famous wrestling match between me and George trying to get the tape, but he won because he was a bigger guy.
So you actually physically wrestled?
Well, I think it was more of a pulling match. I don't think we ever hit the ground, but he got the tape, he put it in the player, and boom, 5 o'clock news was on. And then I got a call after that, and they said, it was from Dennis. He said, do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now? And he hung up the phone. That was the last communication I had with him.
And what has happened to you since then?
After that, a lot of people I've known either were audited by the IRS, anybody I know that had clearances that worked in secure programs had the clearances pulled. One of them, one of mine that Jeremy knows.
He's going on camera with me soon. He'll tell the story now that he's out of work up there.
He was working up at the Tonopah test range, waiting for his clearance to come through, and they pulled that. It became, it's like if they can't get the person that's involved, they just create a problem for everybody that surrounds them. And so, I mean, the way it turns out, it hurt a lot of people's lives that I was connected to. And that's an effective way of shutting someone up. So
Did you feel that by coming forward and going public, they couldn't just snuff you out?
That's what I was told, and George and everybody, said that it's public. There's, no one will touch you, and I fell for it. And
Do you wish you didn't?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes when it's just overstressed and people are camping on your lawn.
Yeah, but this is going to make things worse doing this.
No, this is going to make things better.
That's what I was trying to tell him.
How is this going to make things better?
Well, because you're getting a real chance to explain yourself in a way that's going to make people who not only work in the government, people that are police officers and firefighters and first responders and doctors and scientists, they're going to empathize and empathize with what it must be like to be a person like you in your 20s who gets thrust into this world unknowingly and confronted with one of the most, if not the most, important discovery in the history of human beings. The big question, are we alone? It's the number one question. There's
Right.
two questions, right? What happens when we die, and are we alone? Those are the two big questions.
Right.
And if we're not alone, and someone knows we're not alone, and these some people who know we're not alone are these bungling sort of
Even if they
military
weren't,
folks.
it's a crime that
Yes.
they're not telling the
Yes.
rest of us.
But I don't mean bungling in terms of they're incompetent. I mean they can't be competent. It seems to me, to what you're describing, that no one can be competent with this technology. Like the Victorian era scholars analyzing some sort of a nuclear reactor. There's no way.
Why do you
It's
think
beyond us.
Why do you think they're not telling us? Let's just make an assumption that this is true right now. Why do you think that they're not telling us, that our government doesn't tell us? What's your best
Well,
thought?
let me put it into what you do. If I'm the president, okay, and I get this information, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? There's something that we don't know. There's something we don't understand. There's something that came from another world. We got it tucked away in the mountains. And I just wanted you guys to know about it. Hey, sleep tight. Hey, American Idol's on tonight. Who do you think's going to win?
Yeah.
Who's going to win America's Got Talent?
That's not going to happen.
Da, 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 da,
So
da, 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 da.
one is uncertainty, and the other one is what Bob and I have talked about a lot. Absolutely not knowing what to tell people because you don't really understand it yourself, even though
Right.
you've got these...
What do you say? If you want to run a government, you want to get people to pay their taxes.
But there's something else.
Yeah.
Because,
What do you say?
So you have these objects flying with impunity, right? But you have something else.
Well, not only that, what can you say? Like, how much do you really know?
I think it's
Exactly.
mainly the technology. They
That's-
just want to keep the technology secret because
Military.
if there's, yeah,
Whoever
Yeah.
gets this
there's
wins, dude.
Yeah,
They win.
you
Right.
control the where you literally become invincible once you master the technology. You cannot penetrate a field like that. So imagine I know it's all science fiction, but science fiction turns into science fact. If you have real force fields around aircraft and battleships, you win. You win. You can
Right.
force your will upon anybody. And like I said, there's so much more to the story. When I was first there were Russian scientists at S4. This was early on in the project.
So this was before Operation Paperclip became public as well, right? So
I would imagine.
that was
I don't know what the dates
Yeah,
were.
when was that?
when did that was that?
Recent. 98, I think.
98.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the dates on it.
So it's roughly 10 years later, Operation Paperclip becomes Freedom of Information Act.
We're talking about Russia, not Germany. He's talking about Russian scientists.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, Russian scientists, a lot of them came from Germany. A lot of those rocket scientists that work with NASA, they all came from Nazi scientists.
Got it.
So some Russians got some of them.
I
we
just
got
know
some of them.
at some point there was intense
collaboration
cooperation
with
I mean,
Russia.
even exchanging some ideas on nuclear weapons and EMP tests and stuff like things we would never have discussed with them. But at the same time, it was in the late '80s. They were involved, and actually in the area at S4 with us.
So
And
you got to communicate with these guys, or you saw them?
no, I knew they were there. Barry would talk about the commies that were there.
The commies?
Yeah, the commies. And
That was back when they were the commies, right?
yeah,
It was the
yeah,
Cold
they
War.
were real commies.
Isn't that interesting?
And at some point, it wasn't our group, but at some point, there was a big discovery made. And this did not happen when I was there. It happened in between my trips to there. And after that, apparently, they decided it was just too cool to share with anybody, and the Russians were never allowed back on the base after that.
But you don't know what that discovery was?
No, like I said, it wasn't my group. So one of the other groups really found out something. But in typical American fashion, it was, all right, this is ours. You guys get the hell out of here.
Was there any inkling that any other government had something similar?
No, nothing that I had heard.
See, that was the thing that always freaked me out, was why, if something was so superior to human beings, it's almost like visiting an ant colony. Like, why would you go to the queen? I don't give a fuck who the queen is. I'm a human. I'm so superior to you ants. I don't care who you have running your hive. I'm just going to study it.
I think it's who got it.
Who got it?
Look at the, rocket technology in Germany.
But they got 9 of them?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me either. So they were either in the same area, or one had clues to where others were. I mean, I don't know. You have to fill that in there, but you're right. I mean, 9 of them. That's a big dig if it was archaeological.
Well, one of the more recent sightings and these discussions that have been coming out recently from Air Force pilots and Navy pilots, they've been talking about things happening in the ocean, and that something literally goes into the water, or something maybe below the surface
You're thinking
of the
about
water.
the 2004 Tic Tac Nimitz case. So that's when George Knapp and I broke on the radio twice before the New York Times, so I know this one really well. Commander Fravor and those pilots. There was a disturbance on the surface of the water. Commander Fravor visually saw what looked like similar to a cross, some object. So it's like as if you have some coral under the water and it's breaking over.
Right.
The Tic Tac is doing this crazy maneuver that defies. It's a gravity-propelled system.
They saw it in the sky before they saw it in the water, right?
Yeah, so there were radar that was picking these things coming down from 80,000 feet, dropping to 50 feet in less than a second.
This is it, Jamie? What is this?
Yeah, this is actually on the news today. There was a briefing.
So a lot of people get this confused.
Oh, not this one then either?
No, so
Sorry.
that is called the gimbal. So there's 3 videos released by the Pentagon that are all actual.
Just play and keep the volume off.
Okay.
I would really just pay attention to the source videos. So you've got the Tic Tac, which is this object that Commander Fravor saw. Another pilot filmed it with a FLIR pod, and it goes. Choop. But this one you see is really important to Bob's story. The gimbal craft. It's been recently analyzed. It's FLIR. Not only does it's definitive that it's not conventional anything by its movements, but there's a pocket of cold air around a propulsion source. So this object, by the way, sat stationary for days, if not weeks. It sat stationary.
Yeah, they found it 11 hours later, and they were saying there's no way this thing, using that kind of energy to go that fast, could just hover for
the amount
11
of time.
hours.
And by the way, you're seeing a very small part of what happened that day. This object was not alone. And so hopefully that information comes out, and we can, I wish we had video of it. I'm sure we'd all want to see it. But that's called the gimbal. That was East Coast, right? 2015. West Coast, 2004, was the Tic Tac. The disturbance on the water, Commander Fravor believes there was something under that water that was causing that disturbance when the Tic Tac was coming around and doing it. With inside the people that are studying this, they're thinking maybe the Tic Tac system was causing the disturbance, but the USO, unidentified submerged object that he visually saw, the whole interesting thing about that is, I would love Bob to describe it, is why it doesn't matter if these craft are in space, air, or water. Why doesn't it matter? I love when he talks about this shit.
Well, first of all, Commander Fravor was the F-18 pilot off the Nimitz that was sent out to find out what this stuff is. But and it wasn't just, I got a chance to talk to him recently, and it wasn't just a radar image. Commander Fravor had eyes on it for over 5 minutes watching this thing, as 4 other pilots did. So this wasn't a radar blip or anything. These guys were watching this thing. But, one of the things I think in the gimbal video, the way the craft that we worked on flies is it doesn't fly like a conventional aircraft does, and it doesn't fly like a flying saucer would in a 1950s movie. It flies belly first. I mean, it may set down conventionally, but it always rotates. It does a roll maneuver, puts its belly towards the target, and then moves away
So
at
it'd
high
be
speed.
like a car flying with the wheels forward.
Right. I mean, it may land on the wheels, but at some point when it wants to leave,
Flips
it's going
up.
to flips up, points the wheels where it wants to go, and takes off. And the gimbal video, you can see the craft do the roll maneuver, and it's really interesting. It behaves exactly like the crafts that I worked on.
So much like we have different shaped aircrafts and fighter jets and cars, they probably have different shapes of these objects that operate under similar principles.
Right,
Perhaps.
but they all have the same power source.
They all have the same power source. And we're also dealing with, if you think about the laws of technological progression, you think of Moore's law and you think of how things accelerate, you've got to think that if this civilization is who knows how many years more advanced than we are, if not even years. I mean, we're thinking about it in terms of conventional terms, right? The way we look at the world. I mean, they might be just superior in terms of their intellect. They've got to be. Maybe. We don't know, right?
Well, the only reason I say that is because, look, everyone doesn't necessarily start at a steam engine and go to an internal combustion engine and then, electric power, nuclear power, and go up the ladder that we come on. The binary, if the stuff is true about the origin and the binary star system, and they have heavier elements that we don't have, and this stable element 115 is a naturally occurring material, maybe that's the first thing they started experimenting with. And the version of their steam engine, their first product, was something that operated like this. And actually, when they came to Earth to look around, or whatever, they were amazed at the stuff we were doing. These guys burned stuff and squirted out the back to go forward. So, who says they follow any kind of normal progression like that?
My thought was, if you went back to the 1400s and then you went from 1400 to 1500, you're not going to see that much of a difference technologically.
Right.
If you go from 2000 to 3000, I assume there's going to be a radical change.
Right. Well, the delta, the rate of change is magnificently higher than it used to be.
Right. So if you think about what they had in 1988 and you think about what they probably have in 2019, just logically, it seems like they would advance.
I would think so.
The only question is, are they living? Is that a living thing in terms of like a biological thing, or are they some sort of an artificially created creation like we are working on right now? I mean, we're in the middle of working on artificial reality, artificial beings, sentient beings, artificial intelligence. There's silicon-based life forms that they're essentially trying to create. Boston Dynamics at the company that's making those crazy robots? Yeah.
You can make machines out of flesh, right? So a cyborg or a cybernetic organism is just that, that's what a lot of people think those gray things are, that people call the grays.
Yeah.
Is they're machines printed from flesh. So what you're saying is not
they
so
could just
far
be
off
synthetic life. They don't even need to be, machines.
Right.
Well, they seem to have no sex organs. The way they're described by people that have had interactions with them, assuming these people aren't liars or crazy or whatever.
Right.
That they have no sex organs and that they don't seem to have any muscle. They're just almost like a frame.
Right.
And they have enormous heads. I mean, if you look at Australopithecus or depictions of ancient hominids, and then you go to human beings, one of the things you see is bigger heads and weaker bodies.
Well, you see a clear progression of evolution too, where for something like that, I would lean towards a synthetic organism because it looks like it was made for a specific task. There's no reproductive organs, so I mean that almost kind of leaves out any kind of physical evolution.
Right. Well, that's also our bottleneck, right? Our bottleneck is our biological imperative. The need to breed, emotions, fear, anxiety, all these different things that exist in order to force us into making sure we reproduce. I mean, that's essentially what it is. There are human reward systems that aren't necessary once they can figure out a way to make some sort of sentient artificial life. some sort of thing that doesn't have these biological limitations that we have.
By the way, these craft, all these different kinds have been reported because it was confusing. I always thought of flying saucers what I heard Bob Lazar talk about, flying saucer, right? But if you look back in history, people have always reported the weirdest shapes. Like, none of them are alike. You know, there are the saucers, but you got cigar-shaped, you got, you know, the top hat shaped, you have orbs. Why? Maybe they're serving different purposes. They're doing different things like we'd use different tools. And I want to be clear, the reason I know that memo is real is because I spent a lot of time with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, sixth man to walk on the moon. Last guy to film him before he died, right? That's how I know. I don't want any journalists thinking I got it from anywhere else. I know because of Dr. Mitchell. And he said the same thing. Maybe these things are performing different tasks, you know? And that's why
they seem, if you think about what an alien is in terms of the sort of iconic image of an alien, like the Steven Spielberg Close Encounters of the Third Kind alien, they seem like what we'd assume a human being would eventually become.
Right.
And if these things are tiny, human beings are smaller than they've ever been before. They're weaker than they've ever been before. And there seems to be a trend in that direction. And this trend seems to be amplified by our technological progression, our lack of need for muscle strength and our lack of need for violence. And we're moving in a society to try to get away from all the things that we think are abhorrent about human beings and the terrible behaviors that we have. If we one day do give birth to some sort of an artificial being, like Marshall McLuhan's quote, "We are the sex organs of the machine world." You know, that one day we...
Okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah, McLuhan was brilliant. And that quote has always been one of my favorites because, okay, what are we doing when we're constantly technologically innovating? We're constantly looking for faster cars, better computers, bigger screens, faster, more resolution, more pixels, more this, more that, higher bandwidth, 5G, 10G.
Right.
What are we doing? We're moving into this, if you just follow it, objectively stand back, don't attach yourself or your civilization, your culture to it, and look at what it is. We're moving 100% towards technological innovation. If you looked at this species from afar, and if you weren't a part of it, you would say, well, what does this species do? Oh, they make things. They make things better every year. Beehives are the same fucking thing that you see 10 years ago. You go by, you see a beehive, it's amazing, it's cool, but they're the same fucking thing. They figured out how to do it, they make a beehive.
Right.
We don't do that. We make better things.
What would you
constantly.
And at some point, I think that technology is going to fuse with us.
Yes.
And we're going to become...
It's already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, Elon Musk talked about it on my podcast, that we are cyborgs. You just carry it in your pocket. It's a phone. It answers any question you want. You can talk to it. It'll give you the answers instantaneously. It navigates you. It has all your phone numbers in it. It has all your contacts. You can get a hold of people. People are listening to you through it. It's connecting us in ways even involuntarily.
Haptics, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's also getting on your wrist. How many people have iWatches, Apple Watches? They put them on their wrist.
Right, and that's only because we can't integrate them yet. But you know that point is coming.
100%. Yeah, I didn't joke about it last night, but I have a bit about it that I do, about the integration between humans and technology. That's
What would you do if you were a hyper-intelligence, right? Would you do the work yourself, or would you create some cool things called like humans to do it for you? Would you create things that are cybernetic organisms to come in with machines and do it for you? If you were a hyper-intelligence that has kind of changed like you've described, you'd probably create workers, right?
Well, that's a vast conspiracy theory.
I'm not talking about conspiracy.
But it is a kind of a conspiracy,
I'm
right?
asking you.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that. I mean, you could look at it that way, but that is the way a conspiracy theorist would look at it. The way I would look at it is like there's obviously a progression going on, a biological progression. There's some sort of an integration with technology. There's some sort of imperative, this need for technological innovation. It's inescapable. Everyone has it. And I think it's attached to materialism in some sort of a strange way because so many people work so hard to get new things. And like, God, that seems so illogical and preposterous, and it makes people unhappy, and depression's on the rise, but nobody seems to be able to stop it. Like, why is that? Well, maybe it's because we are the electronic caterpillars that give birth to the butterfly. Maybe that's what we're doing.
That
Maybe
could very well be.
What our job is to do is to make some sort of a cocoon, and we don't even know we're doing it while we're doing it. Do you think a caterpillar is aware? Like, hey, caterpillar, what are you doing? Man, I'm doing my thing. It's my job. I have to make a cocoon. Then I'm going to become like a butterfly.
This could be a natural part of evolution.
It could be.
That we're just supposed to do this.
Exactly.
And make the jump to some sort of mechanized...
Right.
Yeah,
Have
non-biological...
you ever seen an orangutan that is fishing with a spear?
No.
They've figured out how to fish with spears. There's primatologists. I guess you would
Wait,
call
without
them.
somebody showing them how to fish?
No, they've imitated human beings doing it, and now they do it, but they do it independently. They're not trained orangutans. They're wild orangutan. Look at that. There's a wild orangutan.
Okay, that's
spear-
impressive.
That's
That's
very
impressive.
Well, there's these primatologists. I guess you would call them primatologists. That's the term.
That's a great
Biologists that believe that monkeys and chimps and some of the great apes are moving into the Stone Age, that they've currently entered the Stone Age. Like, they're not staying what they were 100,000 years ago or 500,000 years ago, but they're actively using tools, and they're experimenting with different ways to use those tools. And then they're making tools out of stone. They're making tools out of sticks, and they're using them. Well, this might just be what happens. This might just be what happens. I mean, why else? Why the fuck do we work so hard? I mean, I was driving to LA this morning. I had a doctor's appointment, so I was on the 405 at 8 in the morning. Like, Jesus Christ! Like, this is so crazy. When you're on the 405 in LA at 8 o'clock in the morning, you see literally a million cars.
Yeah, red light.
And it's just everywhere you go, it's people. And also, I'm in a Tesla, so I have it on autopilot. So I'm there sitting, I'm listening to a podcast. I barely have my hand on the wheel. I'm not touching shit. This car's driving me along. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just hanging out. It's so much less stress, by the way, to do it that way.
Right.
So it encourages you to innovate. It
Yeah.
encourages you to embrace this new technology. I got this giant screen. It's showing me the navigation in front of me. Oh, I'll be there 5 minutes early. Excellent. And I'm listening to a podcast wirelessly. It's Bluetooth streaming from my phone, and I pulled that podcast, which came out today out of the fucking sky, and I'm listening to it, and I'm all comfortable in my nice little car, just driving on my way to the doctor's office.
This is irresistible stuff.
Yeah. It's different than your Walkman.
Yes,
You know, back in the
it is
day.
irresistible. It is irresistible.
It's frighteningly irresistible.
But is
what
it frightening? I mean, if you were a monkey, right? If you were an Australopithecus, would you go, man, I don't want to fucking be a person and live in a house? That's bullshit. I like just swinging around on trees. I like running from jaguars. This is life. Guys, life is running from crocodiles. It's not living in a fucking suburban
No,
community.
there's probably some that are like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think when it comes, we're going to embrace it. We're going to embrace it the same way you embrace cell phones, the same way you embrace television. There's going to be a few holdouts. I don't even have an email address, man. Those there's a few and far between. Good luck with that, fuckface. Go move to the woods, Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah,
Go live in a
I was
cabin.
just going to throw Ted Kaczynski
Oh,
in
man.
there.
Ted Kaczynski was right. This is something that I think about sometimes when I get really high. That Ted Kaczynski was a part of the Harvard LSD studies. This has been proven. Ted Kaczynski, they cooked his fucking brain when he was at Harvard. And then when he went over to Berkeley and became a professor, his goal was to make enough money so that he could implement this program and live in the woods and then write his manifesto and start killing people that were involved in propagating technology.
He was expunged from the Harvard logs, by the way. This is something my friend just called me about. So there's like this private library, and they used to print people's names whenever they were part of a university, and he was one of a handful of people that were expunged from it. I want to jump back to the one thing, Joe. I want to be very careful with that word conspiracy theorist. What I was saying to you was we terraform our Earth, right? We terraform, we change the environment, we do all this innovation. What is stopping us from thinking that that's not being done? I'm not saying it is. I'm saying what's stopping us from thinking that that's being done on a much bigger level, on a cosmic level.
You mean like aliens coming down doing that to humans?
No, I'm telling you that there is something here. There's a fact. There's something. They're a craft. They're here. They're not ours. They're here. So the question is, what is that about? And I'm just looking at what we do with what you're describing with technology.
Well,
and
I think it's much more likely that the same way we observe chimps and we observe that they are now in the Stone Age, that they're observing us, and that they're recognizing that there is a pattern, that there's steps that happen. I mean, Carl Sagan talked about the different levels of civilization, and that that if we don't get past certain levels, we're never going to reach this.
Right.
I mean, we're
a
in
type
this,
1 civilization.
Yeah.
We're going to stay type 0.
Well,
yeah.
we're in this warring, polluting,
Yeah.
pillaging.
We're awesome.
civilization.
Humans are awesome.
We're awesome in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
you know.
But in that way, we're not.
Well, yeah, we're we're children that have immense power that we didn't really. The other thing is you're using the immense power that other people have created, right? I mean, even when you're driving a car, you're stomping on the gas like, woo! You didn't invent the fucking engine. You didn't invent tires. There's all these things that were involved in the creation of this thing that is really outside of your grasp of understanding, but yet you have the ability to use it. Like a person with a gun, I'm just gonna bang, bang, bang people. You didn't invent a gun, so like you've without the intellect to craft and engineer and manifest these creations, you just have access to them because you have paper or you have Bitcoin or you have whatever the fuck you're using a credit card. Now you have almost no responsibility. You could just flippantly use these things, which is why we were very childlike in our actions because we haven't had to earn the responsibility. We haven't had to earn these things that we've been able to have, and you've only been able to have them because other people have innovated and spent ungodly amounts of time and effort and focus in the lab to create these things, and then they've all put them together. And then what's the reason to put them together? To profit. Well, what's the reason to profit? Well, why are you doing this? So you can buy more things. Well, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're making better things. That's what we do. That's all we do.
That's all we do is make better things.
Yeah. Why the fuck do we need oil? Why do we need oil? Why can't we just burn wood and stay home? Why can't we grow chickens and food in the backyard? Why can't we do it? Well, we fucking can. We certainly can. People do it. But we decide to make that almost impossible. Our preferred way of living is to stuff everyone into a very small area where no one grows anything other than weed. And this is what LA is. LA is 20 million people with hard surfaces, as many hard surfaces as you can. Boy, if you got an acre backyard in LA, holy shit, look at all that green. This is amazing. Well, no, that's the fucking earth coming through this weird sort of creation that we've put on top of the earth. But the goal is that, like New York City, there's none of it. Right? You've got Central Park, and they just got human shit. Humans stacked up. No one's growing anything. And then constant work. Everyone's up early. Go, go, go. Innovate, progress, make that money so you can buy more things. And every year, hey, Apple, where's this fucking new phone? As if your phone isn't good enough. Like your phone's taking pictures and videos, and people are calling you, and you got applications that tell you which way the wind's blowing. It's not good enough.
A blink of an eye, it's all gone, though, that, like 10,000 years and the Hoover Dam goes or whatever, Mount Rushmore disintegrates. So it's amazing because we have created that, and everything's trying to spring up through that. We keep it maintenance down, but we're a blink, man. Something hits.
But we don't think that way. Well, you think in terms of your own life, right? You think in terms of what you want and what you need right now. We are, in many ways, this combination of this weird, primitive, ape-like thing with the ability to calculate and manipulate our world and our environment that makes us wholly unique. On top of that, with existential angst and fear. So what do you do with that? We fucking water it down with antidepressants. Give these fucking people some shit that keeps them moving. Well, they're worried about the future. They're trying to figure out what reality is. You're on a goddamn convertible spaceship spinning 1,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity. There's no meaning to this thing. Just keep making shit. Keep making stuff. And then one day they're going to be able to hit that switch, and this life will be born out of innovation and thinking and progress and technology. And more than likely, it's probably going to be what we're seeing that these things are that you're observing.
I'm not observing them, but yeah.
Well, someone's observing.
Are you implying that they're us?
I don't think they are us, but I think they are what happens when things keep going. It's not us, just like we're not monkeys, right? I'm not a chimp.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Like.
They're from here, is your idea?
No. That this is what happens all over the universe.
Yes, right. Yeah, totally.
That this is what happened. Look, here's the thing. I went to see Brian Cox's. He has this amazing live show with Robin Ince where they have these LED screens, these huge screens with this high resolution depictions of the cosmos. And one of the most mind-blowing things was he has this large-scale image of the universe, and it shows all the individual galaxies of the universe, and it just keeps moving through all these galaxies in 3 dimensions. And it's fucking incredible. But what's stunning is the relative uniformity of it, even at, you're obviously looking at an incredibly small depiction of something that's immensely large, like a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars. You're seeing it as this little dot, but this little dot that's flying through space, surrounded by other little darts with very similarly spaced distances
homogeneous
between
all
them.
through, yeah.
So I'm like, if we see uniformity in that form, in terms of like the distance between galaxies, like so many galaxies, it's so similar. They might vary slightly, and that slightly might be hundreds of millions of light years, right? But there's so much uniformity. Why would we not assume that uniformity exists pretty much everywhere, and that all these things that you're seeing that are so similar, you do see binary star systems, you do see single star systems like star, but there's also some speculation that Earth and that our solar system one time was a binary star system, right? I mean, that's one of the speculations about that object that they find outside the Kuiper Belt that they think is 10 times larger than Earth. They think it might have been at one point in time a star. But this uniformity that you see, why wouldn't we think that has its same implications biologically? That there's some sort of a biological uniformity, and that this happens given the right sets of circumstances.
Yeah, it could be.
You should tell them some of the stuff that you read that you don't know is true. I mean, if the stuff was true about the propulsion stuff, I mean, anyway,
Well, what have you read? What
you saw too. I mean, you know.
What are you talking about? Spill the beans, Bob.
I got to poke the bear here a little bit.
Get some more liquor in you.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could verify was what I had my hands on. There was talk of weapon systems, that there were different projects. Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time, any effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about, small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a not as a, well, it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed in this?
These, again, were just the small briefings that I read. But again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just, small briefings.
But you told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation and not
it could be
propulsion.
Because gravity affects time, space-time. I'm sure you've heard of that. And, what Commander Fravor saw as he was in the F-18 approaching it, he said he described it as a ping pong ball in a cup and shaking it back and forth. It was moving that fast. Now, obviously, if there's anything inside there, it's going to be battered to hell. But, my point was that, well, one of two things. Either there's a gravitational envelope in there which negates any inertia effects, or you are seeing through a gravity distortion field. So, just like you're looking at a hot highway and you see,
Looks like
an
water.
optical distortion going through there. Well, the same thing happens in gravity, and the craft may not actually be moving like that. It may just look like it because you can only see it through the field. So it may be making much more gentle moves. I'm not saying that's it, but it has to be one of the two.
And the thing shows up 60 miles away. They noticed it on radar 60 seconds after it left Commander Fravor, but it was at his cap point, which is the next point he was destined to go to, 60 miles away. And in 60 seconds on radar, the same object ends up there.
So it's going a mile a second.
No, I think the radar just picked it up in 60 seconds.
Yeah, it could have been there instantly, but
we don't know.
The cycle time.
Nobody
on the radio
knows.
was 60
That's the whole thing.
So it cycles, like radar cycles? Like
yeah,
sends
it
out a
doesn't.
beam
It doesn't sweep, but
Right,
I
it's
mean,
like
it
turn-
scans.
like
It's a
that
planar
antenna.
array, so
Okay.
it just it scans around at random places.
That's the Spy one does the really cool. Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't do the whole loop anymore.
Right. The point is though that the craft moved to his next location before he knew where his next location was going to be,
Jesus.
and that's
Documented.
well documented. So that's a pretty shocking piece of information.
What's fascinating to me too is that you were discussing this, the way this reactor worked, and that these things were not really connected.
No, nothing is connected. There's no wiring at all.
That freaks me the fuck out.
Charge your iPhone, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, wireless.
on the little, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a
Well, I
simple
mean,
electromagnetic.
Tesla.
Yeah, I know again, but that's just simple electromagnetic induction.
Right, but I mean, Tesla, the scientist, had this concept of
Right, that's
what he's-
yeah.
that's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
for other
Yeah.
people that don't know what we're saying, he wanted to send wireless electricity through the sky, and Westinghouse was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that!" Like when anybody could just pull electricity out of the sky.
Can't meter it.
Yeah, they
It's-
couldn't.
yeah.
They couldn't.
We had
meter
this
it.
talk in the
Yeah.
car right over. I'm trying to chill him out. You know, we're talking about Tesla and how he couldn't be metered and how it all went down. So it's funny you bring it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, who knows what would have happened in terms of innovation had he been allowed to go forward with that?
Well, we probably wouldn't have computers.
You think?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive.
Why
I
is
mean,
that?
forget about microelectronics. Well, this is dumping huge amounts of electromagnetic energy in the air. And yeah, we'd be able to wirelessly turn on our lights, but there'd be no radio communication. The interference would be something would be overwhelming. It would induce electric currents in anything with a small wire on it. So integrated circuits, transistors would be disintegrated before they were even, tested for operation. So it would
Maybe
destroy.
it would have fucked us up.
Yeah, it would have stopped us dead. It'd be great. You can turn lighters on and heaters from all over the place with no wires, but it would stop modern electronics.
And if we became dependent on it, it would almost be like our dependence on fossil fuels. Although it's destructive, it's very difficult for us to get off the nipple.
It would have changed the course of how we developed, which is so interesting when you talk about if a civilization, other star system didn't even start with fossil fuels. They had 115 naturally on their planet, and they're like, cool, anti-gravity is pretty awesome.
Well, the fact that they didn't
I think it's
have-
important that actually happened.
Yeah.
It might have been stopped in its tracks for a reason.
Whoa. And I think it's incredibly difficult for us to imagine technological progression under another timeline other than the one that we've experienced.
Yeah, that's difficult.
If we imagine what this alien race must have been like, and how, I mean, God, just to be able to see something, obviously we've seen it in different life forms, right? Like we see the life of certain beetles in comparison to the life of certain fish. Very, very different existence, very different life cycles.
Octopus.
Yeah, octopus. Yeah, I mean, we see all these different variables in terms of biological entities on Earth, but we don't see it in terms of technological innovation, as we're the only one that's intelligent that can innovate. I mean, we have intelligent creatures, but they're in the ocean. The only other thing that are like us are dolphins and orcas and whales, and they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment. And subsequently, because they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment, we put them in fish tanks. And we're like, get in the tank, do some tricks.
Right.
The only thing he saw in the craft, if we were considering Bob's story, the only thing that he saw in the craft that he related to that looked like a human could make was this honeycomb hatch. And I always love that because you're like obsessed with this thing that you could recognize.
I only focus on that because it was the one thing that I understood how it worked.
What was it?
And it was the access to the level below, and it was if you take you have a 6-pack of beer and you take out the cardboard dividers, set it on the table, you can put a lot of pressure on the top. But if you push it from the sides, it collapses flat. So it was something like that in a honeycomb shape that was essentially some sort of sheet metal, and you could walk on that in the upper layer, but if you took the corner, stuck your finger in, and pushed, it collapsed and made an entryway. So I thought that was a really unique. I'd never seen that before, and it was the only thing in the craft that made absolute sense to me. I said, we can make that, and all that is a hatchway.
Was there any discussion about the materials that were used to make the craft?
I'm sure there was, but that was the metallurgy division. It had nothing to do with us.
So you never got
not even
hint
the
of
slightest briefing. I don't even know if it was metal or it was ceramic. I think there's a fine line between the two.
Now, one of the things that's happened to you that has allowed people to discredit you was there's obviously been some sort of an effort to erase your past.
Yeah.
Some sort of an effort to erase your education history, your employment history at Los Alamos. In fact, the only way your employment history was proven at Los Alamos is someone got a directory of the employees from the past and read into it, and you were on that list. So it proved that you worked there even though people were trying to deny it, and they were trying to use that as a way to discredit you, that you never did work at Los Alamos. You weren't really a scientist. What was that like to experience? I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1980s, the 1990s, when you could get away with something like that.
Yeah, obviously there were a lot less records on computers at that time. It was still file cabinets and folders. But that was frightening. That was one of the first things.
What happened?
I think George Knapp was the first one that uncovered that. I mean, he saw my birth certificate disappear.
It disappeared.
Yeah,
there was no record of you being.
Yeah, there was no record of that. There was
his mom
no
tells
record.
His mom tells me about that. Like, it was frightening for her. He's got a real family. You know, he's a real person. It's frightening for her.
But the Los Alamos thing really surprised me, and that they were so adamant that, no, this guy never worked here. Don't be ridiculous. And George went back and forth, for
I got the letters on the wall,
months. I mean, it was ridiculous. But fortunately, somebody came up with a 1982 phone book directory. I mean, and also, originally I told you, when I worked there, I was on the front page of the paper. So they were still able to archive, bring that back from the archives. And, Bob Lazar, a physicist working here at Los Alamos. So there was at least something there. But somehow George came up with the phone directory.
And then then Bob took George with cameras into Los Alamos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we flew out there and I said, look, come on in. I'll show you where I worked. We'll go in. We'll meet people. And George went with me and filmed
you knew
inside
how to
there.
Navigate the place, so you'd obviously been there before.
Met people, and and
Los
so
Alamos
no
was also the place where they had the machine that was able to read the size of your digits.
No, that was in Los Alamos. That was S4.
That was S4. And explain that.
So now this was back in the 80s.
And this is back in the 80s where when you discuss this, people are like, this doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it?
It was a way, this is before fingerprint scanners and, and any high resolution scanner at that time. So what it was a device that had a little picture of a hand on a glass plate with pins in it, so you could jam your hand in there. And there was a bright light above it and a sensor underneath. And when you put your hand in there, the light would turn on, and it would measure the bones in your finger because the light shone through your bones. And apparently, the length of the bones in your fingers are extremely unique and easy to measure. And they used that. When you put your hands on there, the light would turn on and your badge would pop out.
There's it right there.
Oh, there it is. That's it. And I tried to describe this to people, and they said, that is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. And I said, hey, my badge came out of that thing. I put my hand on it, badge popped out, and that's how I could open the doors and get into S4. And
and everybody discredited that. They said it was bullshit. It was science fiction. And Jeremy, you found this.
I found it through a good friend of mine named Tyler Rogaway, and he had some good sources inside of Area 52 where they also used these for the stealth program right around that time. So now I've got all these people that worked within who, said only if you're in certain programs would we use this technology. It was kind of shit, actually. They didn't keep it for very long, beginning of biometrics. So I was able to reveal it in my film. I kept my mouth shut until I showed it to Bob. In the movie, the first time he saw it was how you see it in the documentary. That's his genuine reaction. I'm getting goosebumps.
That was a great idea, the way you did it.
Thank you, man, because you know what? Guess what? I'm actually trying to see if he's telling the truth. That's how I started. That's how I started. So it was really cool to see that, and that you get to see it, his actual reaction.
Has that been verified by other people?
Yeah, so to me it has. Personally, I get emails every day, and people are telling me where these are used and how they're used, and send me photos. I got a lot of photos of identimats now.
Well, how they were used, right? They're not
how they were used, but
I
don't. The most recent one was way more recent than I thought in another country. But yeah, that technology was used. So what's so funny is that this technology, even in the Area 52 where they'd use them for Tonopah, one of the guys who will go on camera with me, he will do an interview with me. He was a technician for one of these, and he hated them because they were really bad. They always broke down and he was a technician for him. Now, he won't tell me where. If he worked at Area 52, so it was probably Tonopah. It's very separated, even on the base, but yeah.
So there was that.
Yeah.
There is your education record. That was also, what happened with that?
Well, that disappeared also. You know, that I've never gone anywhere for education. I never attended any classes at Caltech. I never attended anything at MIT.
You did attend classes in those places, though.
I did attend classes in those places.
Do you know anybody that you went to school with?
Yes, I do.
And have they verified that they went to school with you?
Well, I gave Jeremy some names, but the reason I don't say these names publicly is because every single time I mention a name, somebody gets in trouble.
They don't want to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But what is that experience like, seeing your birth certificate erased, seeing your employment
Well, it's
history?
frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
But it's also the fuel that the debunkers use, the so-called air quote skeptics. I don't like the term skeptics. I'm going to say this publicly because I really have only said this privately. I think it's a sloppy, lazy way to look at things, to just be a skeptic.
Look,
I want people to be objective. And I think there's a lot of things you should be skeptical of. I think you should look at things from a hardline science perspective. You should
Absolutely.
be objective. But the idea of skeptics, the problem with that is you're always looking for things to be bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous because I think some things aren't bullshit.
It's confirmation bias on the other end. You're just
It is.
deciding to take a square thing and put it in a round hole no matter what.
And I find a lot of them to be lazy.
Yeah.
A lot of them to be lazy thinkers.
Sure.
Because they're always putting it into that box instead of going, instead of just separating their ego. They're playing a game, and the game is calling bullshit. I want to call bullshit, and I'm going to line up all these reasons why it's bullshit, and I'm going to ignore anything that might be contrary to that definition.
Yeah, that does
Every
happen.
time I'm thinking I'm going to catch him in something, all along this process, I found Dr. Krangle. He came forward and said, I was in security briefings with Bob Lazar, the physicist at Los Alamos. He went on the record with me. Now, the other people I talked with, why won't they go on the record with me? Because they're still working there. So that's the difference, right? What can the public have, right?
Or even if they're not working there, they want to live their lives. Why? I mean, obviously, people have seen what's happened to you.
Mike Thigpen, after 30 years.
Yeah, really,
I found him.
if you look at all the information on, concerning my accounts, that's verifiable, it can't possibly be a bullshit story anymore. It's really way past that point.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was
Mike Thigpen is, how could I possibly know?
So Mike Thigpen was the guy that did the security clearances to go to the base. One of the guys that was
And this
used.
is the guy that you worked with.
He said he did.
Right.
And George Knapp, George didn't believe him. George put him through 4 polygraph tests, right? He tried to see, man, this is a big risk. It sounds interesting, but let's see if he's telling the truth. One of the things was, Bob said there's a guy named Mike Thigpen. He did security clearances for the base, and that's a weird name. It's very specific. For 30 years, George found this guy in this weird department that he didn't even know it was Mike Thigpen. The guy wouldn't talk to me, ghosted him, totally ghosted him for 30 years. Used Facebook and Google Image Match through his children. I was able to find him after 30 years, and I talked to him 3 times on the phone. He lives on the East Coast. He almost went on camera with me. Confirmed that he did security clearances for the base in 1989, confirmed he remembers Bob Lazar, and what you don't know is there's a handwritten note that a friend of yours has from Mike.
What?
I know, I'm going to give it to you later. But that is real. That is actual. So
A handwritten note that says what?
This is new to me.
So when
when they do security clearances, they go through all your friends and family.
And they go to your friends' family, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is
and,
to Bob,
wow.
and I had people come to me for a friend of mine that's serving, and they're doing a security clearance for him. And even though I'm like the UFO guy, they did, the FBI will come and visit my house and make sure that they talk about my friend, and they lift a little card. And when my wife told them to get away because she didn't know who they were, they left a little card. It's super cute now. Back then, it was a handwritten note, and his friend has it for him that you haven't seen in
Oh my God!
2 decades. So if you're listening,
How
friend,
come you're telling me this
hold on.
now?
I don't know why I'm telling
What
this
is
to
this
you.
card?
It's just a little handwritten note with Mike Thigpen's signature.
I mean, a card like a postcard.
like a piece of paper that he
Okay.
left on the door saying when Bob gets back or whatever it says on it. So it's just another little funny thing. I found the guy. He does the security clearances. He admitted to me he did it, and he admitted to me he was dodging George Knapp because when George said his name on the news, he dropped his fork into his steak or into his potatoes or whatever, and he's looking at his wife. He was in trouble. His name's never supposed to be out there like this. Just a security clearance guy. But you don't want national attention associated with anything Bob has to say. But anyway, this unique name Bob said for 30 years, and the guy ghosted George Knapp. George could prove he existed. He actually talked to me, man. He talked to me 3 times. He almost went on camera with me. It's just crazy. What happens after 30 years? You just get more info.
Well, that's one of the reasons why when you and me and Jeremy and George Knapp had that conversation on the phone,
Yeah.
I said, I think what we can do with this podcast is important. I really do. I think it's important for people to hear this from you in a very clear, just very concise way. And if you examine all the information that you've said today, if you look at all the things that the detractors have said, if you look at all of the new recent evidence that's coming out and all these really high-level people in the military and the government that are discussing this, it gives you far more credibility than you would have had in the 1980s
Sure.
when this came out.
Fuck yes. You can't
It's a different
ignore his
world.
story just because you don't like it anymore.
That's why I thought it was important that you come out and refresh the world's memory and let people know. And like I said, I don't want to say I'm a fan of yours, but I guess I'm a fan of yours. As a human being, I'm a fan of yours. But I've been following you for decades. I've been following the story for decades. I mean,
No kidding. Oh.
I have VHS tapes
Bob,
at
like
home.
a lot of the world has.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, anybody
You don't
that
get it.
has any sort of a vested interest or just a fascination with UFOs has followed your story because there's no one else. There's no one else that comes forward. There's some guy who said, I worked underground with the aliens. They shot my hand off. Like, there's a bunch of, like, wacky dudes. They're underground. There's bases. They're shooting lasers through the Earth's crust, and they move them at light speed. There's a lot of those guys. They seem schizophrenic. They seem crazy. They might even be disinformation agents. They might be people that are designed to muddy the waters, which for sure has happened.
People are coming forward, though, now. It's amazing. And by doing this, what you're doing, you're providing an opportunity just for Bob to tell his story. You know, believe it or not, he can tell his story. It's amazing because more people will come forward now that are involved with these projects. They'll come forward to you, to me. They're coming forward. And so what you've done here is provide that opportunity if they need it. And it's amazing. I just want to say, Bob.
Just don't come forward to me.
No, don't come forward to Bob.
Leave him alone, you freaks.
Why were you freaking nauseous at the beginning of this? Like so upset? Why'd you have a migraine? Because that started off so hard. My God, I was sitting here like, did this?
Well, why are you asking him why? It's
because
obvious. Anxiety. The guy's gone through 30 fucking years of being persecuted.
I just
They've
wanna
erased
hear-
his birth certificate.
I just want to
What
hear
do you
him.
want to hear from him?
I want to hear him say. I want them to
Why
hear
do
him.
I have to say that?
You don't.
Joe just said
we
it.
get
yeah.
it.
I step out.
Okay.
Settle down. Yeah, I get it. It was hard for you to get him here, you know, and I
It was
appreciate.
hard for us. You
Well, you did a lot more than me.
What really annoys me are the people that think, you guys just came up with the story to make a bunch of money or get a bunch of, attention. And
That's
look,
a good point. So please explain that. You've
first
never
of all,
made any
I
money
don't
off
get
of this.
any money out of this at all. And I didn't even let you guys buy plane tickets for me to come out here or anything. I mean, anytime, like when Jeremy previewed, I guess, the movie up in Michigan. I mean, it brought in like a couple $1,000s. I made sure that $2,000 went to science programs at the local high schools there.
It's like dirty money. He doesn't want to touch it.
I don't take any money from this stuff. And as far as attention, I hate fucking attention. I don't like being on shows. I just want to kind of hide in the corner and do my own thing. So I got enough hugs when I was a kid. Okay, I don't need any attention. So no, if you think somehow we came up with this thing, then you got to tell me why we did it.
Well, you've done a great job of making sure you have your bases covered in that regard, that you haven't profited off of this, and like you said, that you have donated whatever money that came your way to science programs. It doesn't make any sense any other way. I mean, what I've gotten out of here is what I thought I was going to get out of here when I watched the documentary. That what you're saying makes sense, It doesn't make sense that it's bullshit.
That happened exactly like I said it did, Joe.
I believe you. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I can't think of anything other than really don't come and try to visit me.
Well, I know that you have paid a huge personal cost to get this information out. And, I mean, maybe you didn't understand what that cost would have been when you first initially came forward with the story. But over the past 30 years, it's been immense. It's been great. And I just want to thank you for that. And thank you for all these people that would not have gotten this information and would not have really had this story any other way.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.